My in-laws spread lies about me not wanting children and pressured my wife to leave me. When I revealed their plan to manipulate him into marrying her childhood friend, the family was left speechless. When I first met my wife's parents, it didn't take me long to figure out that they were less than thrilled with me. I was 24 at the time and she was 28. The age difference didn't matter to us, our connection was too strong for numbers to matter. But for her parents, it was as if I had walked into their lives with a flashing sign that said, "Not good enough." From day one, they made their feelings clear. Her father made offhand comments about my youthful ambition, which was just his polite way of saying he thought I was immature. Her mother was worse. She would ask questions like, "Don't you think it's time to settle down?" Or, "When will you be ready to take on real responsibility?" As if I hadn't already planned my entire future with her daughter. Despite the constant digging, I bit my tongue and remained polite. I knew their approval would take time, and more importantly, I knew my wife then girlfriend was worth the awkward dinners and judgmental stares. Fast forward a few years, and by the time I was 28, I had built a home for us from the ground up. It wasn't a mansion, but it was ours, a place where we could grow together and create a life on our own terms. My wife was my biggest supporter during this time, cheering me on as I worked day and night to achieve my goals. But even after that, her parents couldn't seem to let go of their reservations. They criticized the fact that we didn't have children yet, whispering about how I was holding them back and wasting their best years. Never mind that my wife and I had agreed to focus on our careers and personal growth before starting a family. The worst part? They never said it to my face. Instead, they dropped these little seeds of doubt in my wife's ear, hoping to turn her against me. At first I thought it was just meddling. But over time, it became clear that they had an agenda. At first, my wife didn't say much about her parents' comments. She would brush them off during our conversations, saying things like, "Oh, that's just how they are," or, "They mean well, even if it doesn't come out right." But over time, I noticed subtle changes in her mood after her visits. She'd come home quieter, more thoughtful, as if something was weighing on her. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd usually shrug it off. Then, one night, she finally let it out. "My mom keeps asking why we haven't started a family yet," she said, staring at her plate during dinner. "She says it's unusual for a man to delay having children." I put down my fork, choosing my words carefully. "We've talked about this. You know our plan. This isn't about what's usual, it's about what works for us." She nodded, but her expression didn't change. She said that maybe you don't really want kids with me? That you're just putting it off until it's too late. My heart dropped. She said that? She nodded again, and for a moment the room felt heavy with unspoken tension. I couldn't believe her parents would stoop so low as to use something as personal as our family planning as a weapon against me. "Do you believe her?" I asked cautiously. "No," she said quickly. "But it's exhausting to hear it all the time. They make it sound like I'm making a mistake trusting you." Her words stung, not because she doubted me, but because her parents clearly did, and they weren't shy about trying to manipulate her. From that point on, the tension only grew. Every time her parents came over or invited us to dinner, there'd be a new comment, a new jab disguised as concern. "Have you thought about freezing your eggs?" her mother once asked casually, as if she wasn't implying that I was wasting my wife's time. Another time, her father chimed in. "You know, back in our day, men put their families first. Career came second." It was relentless. And no matter how much my wife tried to defend our choices, they wouldn't let up. The comments at dinners and family gatherings were bad enough, but the real damage began when her parents began spreading lies about me behind our backs. At first it was subtle. Extended family members would ask odd questions, things that felt out of place. "Is everything okay between you two?" Or, "Are you thinking about starting a family soon?" These weren't unusual questions in themselves, but the way they asked them felt loaded, like they already believed something was wrong. Then the rumors started coming back to us. My wife's aunt casually mentioned that she'd heard I wasn't interested in fatherhood, and that my wife was too afraid to confront me. It was absurd. We'd had countless conversations about our future, and we were in complete agreement. But clearly her parents had spun a different story. One night I heard my wife on the phone with her mother. Her voice was strained, and I could hear the frustration bubbling under the surface. After she hung up, she sat down on the couch and rubbed her temples. "They tell people you don't want kids," she said quietly, not looking at me. At first, I didn't even know how to react. It felt like I was being ambushed in my own life. "What exactly are you saying?" I asked, keeping my tone as calm as possible. "They're saying that you're stringing me along," she said. "That you're never going to give me what I deserve." I could feel the anger building in my chest. They weren't just meddling, they were actively trying to sabotage our relationship. The worst part was the way they framed it all as concern. They weren't attacking me outright. They were planting seeds of doubt, hoping to manipulate her into questioning everything we had built together. Their ultimate goals soon became clear. One of her mother's friends happened to mention that my wife's childhood friend, a man her parents had always liked, had just moved back to town. It wasn't subtle, and it wasn't innocent. They were trying to pave the way for her to leave me and reconnect with him. The manipulation wasn't just irritating, it was exhausting. Day after day, I could feel the strain on my wife. She didn't doubt me, but the constant pressure from her parents was taking its toll. One night, after another tense phone call with her mother, she told me she had to go for a walk. I watched her walk away, my frustration bubbling over. I couldn't stand by while her parents tried to drive a wedge between us. I began to pay more attention to her behavior. It wasn't hard to connect the dots once I really looked. Their comments, the concerned questions from the extended family, the sudden reappearance of her childhood friend, it was all too coordinated. It didn't take long for my suspicions to be confirmed. A mutual acquaintance let it slip that her parents had talked openly about how I wasn't serious about being a family man. They'd called her childhood friend a better match, and even hinted that he should reach out to her. I wasn't sure what infuriated me more, the lies they were spreading about me, or the audacity of trying to push someone else into her life while we were happily married. The last straw came a week later. Her childhood friend showed up at our house unannounced, carrying a bottle of wine and acting like he had every right to be there. My wife looked confused, and I was seething. "I thought your parents said it would be nice for us to get together," he said casually, standing in our doorway like an uninvited salesman. That was it. I wasn't going to let it go any further. Seeing her childhood friend standing there, acting like he belonged in our lives, pushed me over the edge. I clenched my jaw and forced myself to stay calm as I invited him in, not because I wanted him there, but because I wanted to get to the bottom of this. My wife, clearly uncomfortable, asked why he'd come. His answer was casual, almost rehearsed, as he explained that her parents had mentioned that she might appreciate some company. He spoke as if he were doing her a favor, and it was obvious that he thought he had their blessing to come between us. It all clicked. This wasn't just about spreading lies anymore. Her parents were actively orchestrating an escape route for her that led directly to this guy. When he finally left after an awkward half hour, I turned to my wife. "This isn't right," I said firmly. "Your parents are crossing every line imaginable, and you need to see this." She looked torn between loyalty to her family and the reality of what was happening. "I don't understand why they're doing this," she admitted, shaking her head. I decided it was time to lay it all out. I told her about the lies they told, the hints they dropped to relatives, and the way they practically invited her childhood friend back into her life. I didn't sugarcoat it, they were trying to sabotage our marriage. At first, she didn't want to believe it. "Maybe they just don't know how to communicate," she said weakly, still clinging to the idea that they meant well. "They don't have to communicate that way," I said. "This isn't about love or caring, it's about manipulation. And it's affecting both of us." She fell silent, and for the first time I saw the weight of it all begin to sink in. Over the next few days, the mood in our home was tense. My wife was quiet, clearly struggling with everything I'd told her. I gave her space, but I couldn't just let it go. Her parents' interference wasn't something that could be ignored anymore. One night she finally broke the silence. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began hesitantly. "And I think you're right. They'd been crossing lines for a long time, and I've just let it happen." Hearing her admit it was a relief, but it was also heartbreaking. Not only did she realize how much they'd manipulated her, she also realized how blind she'd been to it. "They've always been like this," she continued. "Even when I was younger, they had this way of making me feel like I owed them everything. I guess I just thought that's how families worked." I could see the guilt in her eyes, but I reminded her that none of this was her fault. "You didn't ask them to act this way," I said. "But we can't let them keep doing it." That weekend, we decided to confront her parents together. I wasn't looking forward to it, but it was the only way to stop their interference. When we arrived at their house, they greeted us warmly, as if they hadn't been behind the chaos. But as soon as we sat down, my wife got right to the point. "I know what you've been saying about us," she said firmly. "And I know you've been trying to bring him down." She gestured toward me, in front of everyone. Her parents immediately went on the defensive, denying everything. Her mother feigned innocence, claiming she was only concerned about her daughter's future. Her father tried to put the blame on me, accusing me of overreacting. But this time my wife didn't back down. "You lied to my family and tried to make me doubt my husband," she said. "And you brought my childhood friend into this like I'm some kind of pawn in your game. Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" Her words cut like a knife through the room. For the first time, I saw her parents falter. They weren't used to being challenged, especially by their own daughter. Her parents stared at her, shocked at the sudden confrontation. Her mother opened her mouth to speak, but my wife didn't give her the chance. "No, you can't talk your way out of this," she said, her voice firm. "You've meddled in my life for years, but this is too far. You tried to break up my marriage. You lied to me, to my family, to everyone, just to further your own agenda." Her father scoffed and leaned back in his chair. "We were only doing what we thought was best for you," he said, his tone dismissive. My wife didn't flinch. "Best for me?" she repeated. "You think it's best for me to doubt my husband? To feel that I can't trust my own family? To have someone I barely know show up at my house thinking he's been invited back into my life?" Her mother looked down, avoiding her gaze. Her father shifted uncomfortably, trying to maintain his authority. "We were only trying to protect you," he said. "He's younger, untested, and we didn't want you to regret your choices." I couldn't keep quiet anymore. "You don't get to decide what she should regret," I said firmly. "Your job as her parents is to support her, not to manipulate her into doing what you want. And for the record, I'm not some kid who doesn't know what he's doing. I've built a life with your daughter, a life you're trying to tear apart." The room fell silent. My wife took a deep breath and collected her thoughts before delivering the final blow. "This ends now," she said. "I'm not going to let you control me anymore. If you can't respect my marriage and my choices, then we're done. You will have no place in our lives." Her words hung heavy in the air, and for a moment neither of her parents responded. They weren't used to being challenged like this, especially by their daughter. Finally, her mother spoke, her voice shaking. "We didn't want to hurt you. We just wanted you to have the best. You don't get to decide what's best for me," my wife replied. "That's for me to figure out. With him." She reached over and took my hand, her grip firm and steady. The drive home was quiet. My wife stared out the window, her expression a mixture of relief and sadness. I knew that confronting her parents had taken more out of her than she cared to admit. When we got home, she collapsed on the couch and let out a heavy sigh. "I don't know if I feel better or worse," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I sat down beside her and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "It was necessary," I said softly. "They needed to hear it. Whether they change or not is their choice, but you set your limits. That's what matters." For a few days, everything was eerily quiet. Her parents didn't call or text, which was unusual. It felt like the eye of the storm. Then the messages began to trickle in, but not from her parents. Relatives began to reach out one by one, parroting the same story. Her aunt called to say she'd heard about the fight, and couldn't believe how disrespectful we'd been. A cousin texted her, suggesting she make amends before things got worse. Even her childhood friend, the one her parents had tried to force into her life, sent a message, awkwardly apologizing for any misunderstanding. It didn't take a genius to figure out what was going on. Her parents were spinning their version of events, rallying the family to pressure her into caving. But this time, she wasn't fooled. "They're just trying to double down," she said one night, scrolling through the barrage of messages. "They think if enough people get involved, I'll give in." "And will you?" I asked, already knowing the answer. She shook her head, a determined look in her eyes. "No. For the first time, I feel like I'm seeing them for who they really are. It hurts, but it's also freeing." Despite the outside noise, life at home felt lighter. Without their parents looming over us, we were finally making decisions for ourselves without guilt or second-guessing. For the first time in years, it felt like we were truly living for ourselves. But her parents weren't done yet. Just as we were beginning to enjoy the peace, her parents made their most desperate move yet. It began with an unexpected phone call. My wife's phone buzzed during dinner, and when she saw her mother's name on the screen, she hesitated. After a moment, she let it go to voicemail. "I'm not ready for whatever this is," she said, putting the phone down. The next day, the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I was greeted by her father, standing on our porch with a solemn expression and a carefully prepared speech. He had come alone, which was unusual. "I need to talk to her," he said, his tone unusually calm. I called my wife and she reluctantly joined us in the living room. Her father wasted no time in launching into a monologue about family, forgiveness, and how misunderstandings shouldn't destroy relationships. "We were wrong," he said, his voice heavy with insincerity. "We only wanted the best for you, and maybe we went about it the wrong way. But we can't let this divide the family." I crossed my arms, unimpressed by the sudden change of heart. I could see through the act, but my wife seemed torn. Her father continued, his tone becoming more emotional. "Your mother has been crying nonstop. She can't eat or sleep because of what happened. We just want things to go back to the way they were." My wife looked at me for support, and I gave her a subtle shake of my head. We both knew that the way things were meant allowing them to control our lives again. But then her father dropped the bombshell. "We talked to Greg too," her childhood friend. "He said he just wanted to make sure you were happy. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to keep an open mind." It was clear that this wasn't an apology, it was another attempt to manipulate her. My wife stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You don't get to decide what makes me happy," she said, her voice shaking. "And you definitely don't get to bring him into this. This isn't about family, it's about you trying to control me." Her father tried to respond, but she cut him off. "We're done here. If you can't respect my choices, then you have no place in my life." Her father left that day looking defeated, but I wasn't convinced it was over. We had seen this pattern before, a temporary retreat followed by another calculated move. For the first time in weeks, my wife seemed completely determined. "I'm done giving them chances," she said later that night. "If they want to be in my life, they're going to have to do it on my terms. No more manipulation, no more interference." We knew we had to take action to protect the peace we'd worked so hard to create. First, we set firm boundaries. My wife sent a message to her parents laying it all out clearly. They were not to bring up Greg again, they were not to interfere in our relationship, and they were not to speak on our behalf to the rest of the family. Predictably, the reaction was defensive. Her mother sent a barrage of emotional texts about how we were being unfair, while her father remained silent. But my wife didn't back down. She ignored the guilt and stuck to her message. Next, we focused on regaining control of the narrative. We reached out to the family members who had been fed lies and calmly explained the truth. My wife told them about the manipulation, the attempts to bring Greg into our lives, and the toll it had taken on her. Most were shocked. Some apologized for believing the rumors, while others chose to remain neutral, not wanting to get involved. Either way, it felt like a weight had been lifted. The final step was to cut off any remaining influence her parents had. We blocked them from social media to avoid their passive-aggressive posts, and limited their access to our lives. For the first time, we felt in complete control of our home and our choices. With boundaries firmly in place, life began to feel easier. The constant tension, the meddling, the manipulative games were all gone. For the first time in years, we could focus on each other without the shadow of her parents hanging over us. At first, her parents tried to keep up the fight. Her mother sent emails filled with guilt-tripping phrases like, "You're breaking your father's heart," and "We only want the best for you." But my wife didn't respond. She was finished. Her father made one last attempt, calling me directly. He spoke calmly, almost too calmly, as he tried to convince me that I was the problem. "You've driven a wedge between her and her family," he said, as if I hadn't tolerated her meddling for years. I didn't lose my temper. I simply told him, "She's happy now, and that's all that matters. If you can't respect her choices, then this is the end of it." And it did. They finally backed off, realizing they were no longer in control. As weeks turned into months, the peace in our home felt surreal. My wife and I grew closer, stronger, and more united than ever. Without her parents' constant criticism, we found more joy in the little things: cooking dinner together, planning future trips, and simply enjoying the home we built. Eventually, we even started talking about expanding our family. It was on our schedule, not anyone else's. My wife was more excited than I'd seen her in years, and for the first time, the thought of fatherhood didn't feel weighed down by outside expectations. We never cut her parents out of our lives completely. Over time, we allowed minimal contact, but only on our terms. They quickly learned that if they crossed the line, they'd lose access altogether. Looking back, it was one of the hardest things we've ever faced as a couple, but it made us stronger. We proved to ourselves and to everyone else that our relationship was built on trust, love, and mutual respect. Life isn't perfect, but it's ours. And I'll always be grateful for that.